Happy New Year. How are you, Precious?
Absolutely. Happy New Year to you. I was getting carried away with the intro music. I was doing my little happy dance. Thank goodness you guys can't see that.
Well, after you've been away for a couple of weeks, it's like a nice little kind of return to what we were doing at the end of 2020. So that's not too bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good to be back. I definitely look forward to these. You switched it up a little bit this week, doing this on a Friday. So happy Friday to everyone. But super excited about what we're about to jump into.
Yeah, most definitely. So, anyone who's new to the program, if you watch this live or even on the recorded version, I would implore you to please like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, get this out there. We are Sell Like a CPCU. This is a production of the Agents and Brokers Interest Group from the CPCU Society. The goal is just to get some great tips, tricks, hints, some advantages out there for folks that end up watching this and really kind of put like an educated slant on it, a la the insurance professionals that are a part of the CPCU Society. So with that, I think we have a fantastic guest lined up today. Precious, you were the facilitator, so do you want to take the lead in introducing our fantastic guest today?
Sure, thank you. So this is a guest, I feel like she needs no introduction. She is a friend of those of us in the CPCU Society. She's been featured on Profiles in Risk as well. So she is someone who understands the daily walk in terms of being in the industry and has taken all of that and kind of transitioned into another much needed service for sales, just for professionals in general, learning how to create our brand identity and tell our stories so that we really connect with our audiences and our prospects alike. So with that, again, the lady who needs really no further introduction, I'd like to introduce you guys all to Miss Deidre Wright.
Hi, Deidre.
Hi. Hi, Matthew. Hi, Precious. Man, Precious, that was one heck of an intro. Thank you.
But I hope I did you justice, because to put all that wonderfulness in one intro sentence is a stretch. No, so I absolutely, huge fangirl moment. Everything that you do, I follow and I hang on your every word. So, we're really appreciative that you've given this time to come on and grace us with your presence and really just kind of share with us your magic and what you do and how insurance and professionals alike. Again, I can't stress that enough, that these things are for folks that are in sales and whatever walk of life, learning how to really figure out who you are and tell your story. I'm hard pressed to find a situation that wouldn't be beneficial.
Can I tell you something real quick? You want to know the reason why it was an easy yes to coming on the show? While others have asked and I said no, it's because you guys have powerful personal brands. Obviously, I know it's Precious. I knew of Precious before. I think I met her. And then Matthew, I met you earlier, last year, and we did a talk. And then I see you constantly on my LinkedIn timeline. So when we talk about this topic, it's real world experience. I said yes because they have powerful brands. I mean, obviously they're great people, they're hard workers, but I knew of them before I knew them. And so it was an easy yes.
That's a huge point, Deidre. That's something that his ears are going to ring somewhere in upstate New York. One of the things that kind of pushed me along the line of really starting to build a personal brand was Ryan Hanley. And when he started talking a couple of years ago about, how 70% of the sale is made before you even meet the person in most cases nowadays, because of how, digital and connected everyone has gotten. Do you kind of lean in? Does that statement resonate with you?
Well, I just come into it with this knowing I'm a second generation insurance professional. For those who don't know, I worked in the industry, so grew up in it. I was a broker at both Marsh and Aon, worked at Business Insurance Magazine. Additionally, I was a board advisor to Juniper Labs, who got acquired by Next Insurance. So I say that because I know the industry, and it's all a people industry. At the end of the day, we're here to help people and businesses, be there on their hardest day, but it's all about people. And so I say this: if you are afraid to share your thoughts, or you're afraid to be in front of people, whether online or in person, then I don't think this is the industry for you, or you got to find a role that's not going to be sales or customer service, because it's, at the end of the day, it's all about the people and knowing what do you stand for, What do I go to you for? And making sure you're memorable so that even if you're on the team, you're not forgotten about, because people are like, well, I don't really know this person. Can I go to them when I'm making a mistake or having a hard day?
Yeah, no, I think that's completely apropos. A lot of people that are company people, and hello to Terrence, Happy New Year, and hello to Matthew Maxwell, saying he had to get in here before Tony Conyers. I'm glad he was able to front run Tony this episode. And yes, Ryan Hanley did go rogue because he's now running Rogue Risk, if anyone's following him. So a little more of a kind of a props to Ryan Hanley. But yeah, no, a lot of company people get really worried, but just something like this, right? Like someone could go off half cocked and they could say anything that they want. But really, it's like, this is the ultimate truth serum, right? Like if you can get out in front of people and share what you have to say and be who you are, like, and be authentic, and you're not afraid of that, then huge props. If you're worried that you're going to get in front of people like this and say something that's going to offend them or say something that's going to get you in trouble, you might have to rethink how you're deciding to choose your words and what you think and what you're putting out there. I mean, does that resonate with you, Precious?
Absolutely. It's really interesting because, on all the various social media platforms, whether they're personal or professional, anytime someone reaches out, I kind of pre-vet them before I accept them these days, And so like I had a call with someone earlier this week and, immediately, looked on the LinkedIn, we had 60 plus common, connections. And so they kind of vouch for, right, the person. I'm like, okay, this is someone that's obviously regarded in high esteem. We know the same people. I guess what that speaks to is, he can't be too lousy of a character because, these particular people wouldn't have embraced him and associated themselves with them, if that were the case. And to Deidre's point, the goal, the ultimate compliment, so thank you, is when you can create a reputation that precedes you, that goes ahead of you. And so, learning how to leverage these things so that people kind of get a little bit of a taste for who you are. They can kind of hear your voice passively in the things you can write. They feel a sense of your humanity. So they know that you're an actual living, breathing human being that's going to be relatable. Because, sometimes I think we just get too stuffy and put on so many airs where we want to showcase all of our credentials, but can we have a conversation, or am I going to feel prejudged because everything I say, I'm worried in the back of my mind, oh, is that a dumb question? Is she going to look at me differently if I don't know the answer to that? So we have to set the stage, and setting the stage, is really kind of going beyond the typical song and dance of, oh, I graduated from this school and I have these things. It's like, okay, but how familiar are you with people like me? How can you specifically identify things that are commonplace to where I'm at? And again, at the end of the day, why do I want to do business with you? So that's really what we want to talk about. How do you relay all of the things that at the end of the day are going to help you get in the door and get the sale done?
Yeah. What would you say the first steps are, Deidre? Like if someone hasn't really kind of consciously thought about, all right, how am I going to build my personal brand and kind of like build an image for myself, a public image? What's the starting point?
That's a good question. Actually, Matthew, I have a 4-step framework that I use and tell my clients and everyone. And it's like clarity, credibility, network, and brand. That's the foundation for building a powerful personal brand that will position you to prosper. So what does clarity mean? That means being clear on what does success look like on your terms, defining it, owning it, because everyone has individual success journeys. And if I'm trying to be like you or Precious, it's not going to satisfy me because I'm not defining what success is like for me. So how are you going to position a brand if you don't even know what you're going after? So the first thing is clarity and understanding what am I actually trying. So for example, I've tried different roles. Something I always enjoyed was marketing and problem solving. And so I think the first role, which was being a broker, made sense. But then I'm not a numbers person. So it was draining my energy trying to do that. I love interacting with clients. I love solving problems and figuring out, how to get things done, because insurance is one big puzzle and contract. So to me, that was fun. But the other work drained me. So it was not a good long-term fit. So once I got clear on what I wanted, I'm a lot more happier and successful because my brand aligns with what I want. So now I get opportunities flooding me for things that I want because I'm clear on what I want and I position myself to get it.
Mm. That's a good point. That's yeah, that's very powerful. So I think that's the step that a lot of people miss, right? Like there's something to be said about like, leaping before you know how to fly, right? Like, but that being said, at least somewhere in that beginning, you're not going to see, and this is also something that like folks shouldn't expect like returns immediately, right? Like that's a lottery ticket. There's no lottery ticket in this environment. But one of the things that you have to do is, even if you're one of those people who's like, you know what, I'm just going to turn the camera on and go and see what happens, right? You have to do the head work to be like, all right, who am I? What's my voice, right? Who am I looking to speak to? Which is a big one. That was one of the things that I think I still struggle with is like, who am I speaking to, right? Like what is going to be that kind of, the visage or the example of that perfect individual on the other end of the computer or the phone, and how do I have to kind of approach that conversation, or how I'm building my brand and kind of positioning myself. Do you think brokers do a really good job of that, or do you think they need some work on that?
I think, can I be all the way well, for anyone who knows me, I'm pretty real. And I appreciate Tony saying once you have alignment and understanding on what you want your brand to be, then you properly execute opportunities that come free. So it's like you got to have, there you go, Tony. It's not a party without Tony. So I will say, honestly, if I can be real with you, I think majority of people in our space are sheep, because we are managing risk, but we don't want to take risk. And I will tell you right now, anyone who's in insurance right now, your biggest liability is being invisible, because you're the first one to get let go and forgotten. Ouch. So yeah. I will say that a lot of brokers, they think about, I have to be a certain way if I want to get to the next level. You know, who's the person the person you need to impress is your client. Your client gives you job security. I mean, I'll say this. The firms, they can let you go, but if a client wants you, they'll follow you. So if you're not out there showcasing your unique value proposition, then you are already losing, okay? So you need to be clear on who you are and promote that, and make sure your client is clear on what you stand for, because no matter where you're at, they're going to follow you if they're aligned with your values and your personality.
Yeah, I would say when I broke away from a larger broker to start my own shop, when we polled our clients, the ones that eventually moved over to us, they didn't even know who we worked for. they knew our names. Like they might have tangentially known the company name, but at the end of the day, when someone asked them, like if someone just called them out of the blue and said like, who's your risk manager? Who's your broker? They'd be like, oh, it's Matt. Right? Like that's who my risk manager is. That's why my broker. And you're right. Like, and there's two types of invisibility. There's invisibility, like the traditional form of invisibility, like they haven't heard from you in forever. And, you don't do a good job of like getting in front of their face and being top of mind and things like that. That's kind of like I don't even know the word for it. It's like the invisibility that's like, you're not even in the picture. Right.
Like, and you real? Are you a robot or are you real? It's like, are you an auto chatbot?
Well, and that was my other point, was the other form of invisibility is where you just blend into the landscape.
Stand out.
You're there, but you wear the same 3-piece suit. You have the same shtick. You have the same products. You come about it the same way. Like if there's no uniqueness to the way that you're approaching something, you're going to run into that victimhood of being just another part of the landscape. And the problem is that now the client looks at you like you're replaceable. Like, I'll just bring in the next person that's wearing the Brooks Brothers 3-piece suit that has the same shtick and everything like that. I've definitely, you have to see that, right, Precious? I mean, you're in a pretty niche market. There's got to be differentiators that you're kind of putting out there, right?
Well, I was just laughing to myself when you said that because I remember, the very first agency that I ever worked at, obviously my name wasn't the one on the ID cards. I was the producer.
Hmm.
But if you ask the customers, like you said, who are you insured with? Precious. No, that's not the carrier. Precious is not going to write a single claims check for you. Who is the actual company? And so this agency that I worked at, I'm still very close to them. Whenever I go home, whenever I go back to Louisiana, I visit. And so I guess year before last, I went to visit and I was just standing in the front chatting with them, and customers were in and out doing their thing. And most of the customers that walked in, they spoke and like, "Hey, Miss Precious, how are you?" And they came and left, came and left. And so finally one that came in the door was like, "Hey, good to see you." I was like, I've been gone for 5 years, right? Like, I don't even work here anymore, but I was family, right? Because they were comfortable with me, and they still associated me with, being there, and that's like actually a good thing, which meant they didn't really have any additional needs, because in 5 years' time, they never called once and asked to speak with me, which, I'll take that as a positive thing. But when you have that connection moment, right? When you're able to differentiate yourself, and you're able to, again, that's the depth of relationship, and so oftentimes, as salespeople, you ask someone, well, what kind of insurance do you want to sell? And like, the one that's commissionable.
What makes me the most money?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure that, because not only do we, right, yeah, I could totally, one day, I don't know, that might be, hashtag, career goals. But today I represent bigger pockets than mine. So I appreciate that. But, when I think about, that oftentimes we try to be, what's the phrase, a jack of all trades, an ace of none, and in the agency broker environment specifically, chances are you're not built and equipped to handle everything under the sun. And so you have to make some decisions early on, because whatever you bring in, you also have to service and maintain. And so, there's different market segments, whether you're talking about small commercial, mid-market, national, whether you're talking about lines of business or different verticals, where you kind of have to make a decision up front. I could probably sell to a lot of people, but can I keep them happy? And so that's got to be part of the agency identity. And so, especially when you're working for either a brokerage or independent agency, and I've said this on the show before, it's always a 3-part close. I have to sell them on me as the broker. I'm the professional you want to work with. The agency, because we as a whole are going to be taking care of you. And then, of course, the carrier. And if I can't nail down all 3 nails of the tent, it's going to fly away, And so I think people are more comfortable. We know how to pitch a carrier, right? Oh, they've got an AM Best rating and they're this many billion in assets. Like, we know how to tell their story. Even the agency, oh, we have been around since 19 blah blah blah, but we always get kind of shy because it feels, and I guess, Deidre, that's my question for you. How do you tell your story and brag on what you're proud of without it coming across as too much? Because I think people wrestle with that. Like, how do I tell them, hey, you want to work with me, without feeling, I think especially as women, we wrestle with that a lot.
That's a good question. Well, for me, it's like, I know I'm not bragging, I'm bringing value. So, I mean, it's getting clear on the mindset. I think part of that's mindset. If you are sharing information that could be of value to somebody, you're leading from facts, not flattery, why not share it? So I always say, lead with what your credibility. That's the second part of my framework, is credibility. Talk about wins, talk about case studies, talk about results. So for example, you can say, hey, like, for example, I'm a personal brand strategist. Okay, who cares? I'm a personal brand strategist with 4 viral LinkedIn posts between 22,000 and 95,000 views. I spoke at events that feature celebrities. I've gotten sales using LinkedIn posts, for Fortune 500 companies as well as small businesses. So is that bragging? No, it's facts. And so if you want similar results, then you might want to work with someone who can mentor you on how to get them. So I think it's all in mindsets. Like, I say this day in, day out. Branding is not for flattery, it's for goals. So be strategic and lead with facts that are going to help your network, the person you want to help, and lead with value. Like, I don't believe in, like I said, flattery, because that doesn't really get me anywhere or help somebody else. But if their mindset is shifted to, how can I be of service to somebody else? share your wins to help them out. It is selfish to hoard information. If you have information to help someone better their life or better their business and you don't share that, shame on you. So just change your mindset of how can I be of service and value to somebody else?
Yeah. And
Wow.
and I think to kind of add to that point, the embarrassment should happen when you're overselling what you've done, or when you're completely fabricating things, right? Like that was something I worked for Prudential before I got into the property and casualty insurance industry. And the one thing that I could never, and this is not a knock on Prudential, this is just, their business model didn't really fit with my thing. Like if I sat down at the kitchen table and I was like, well, the Prudential product is, $50 a month. And like, well, I can get this one over here from XYZ company for $45 a month. Why should I go with yours? I was trying to sell them on like my consultative role and everything like that, but I really couldn't sell them on, well, our product is better than that, because it just wasn't. It was the same exact product, right? So, part of that has to do with like, if all of a sudden you think you're like fibbing a little bit, I think you should be embarrassed. You should be, a little bit taken aback by it. I love the fact that you use like social proof, right, to sell your services, Deidre. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand, that like 70% of the buying decision being made ahead of time, that's all that social proof. It's whether someone's seen you before, whether they've heard you before you even have a personal conversation face to face or over the phone or over Zoom, that's that social proof. So one of the things that came out relatively recently was an article that you wrote about selling insurance services with LinkedIn stories. And this was published on Agency Nation. Is this the first thing that you've published with Agency Nation? Or
yes, I'm a content contributor. It's my first thing I wrote. It's funny. I used to write a lot. Like I actually had to write like 100-page thesis to graduate college. And then I stopped writing. So now I'm, writing again. And so that's my first thing I wrote for them, because LinkedIn stories were new. And I saw the power of it. I got a sale. Like I signed a client from me just posting my stories and sharing my knowledge and client wins with people. It's social proof. Hey, I love Brett.
Brett.
So part of that is, got you. Yeah. So part of it is visibility, whether it's startups who need visibility or you are starting up and selling your own story. It's really crucial that you share what makes you, what's your value, what makes you unique, and how have you demonstrated success in the past. And so I say that because we have all these free tools. I don't want to hear any excuses of how people cannot generate leads or generate jobs, because you have all these free tools now more than ever to sell yourself. Whether you are really a producer, you need to be talking about your product, because the thing is, people don't listen to you. Just because you said it once doesn't mean anyone listens. You got to say the same repetitive. Being repetitive keeps you consistent and makes you an expert. Pressure was talking about not being a jack of all trades. Like if you want to be that known industry celebrity, you got to be consistent and share a message. Share, hey, what's going on? I had this great client. For example, today I just got a great email. A client, I helped her pitch herself to be in the media to showcase her services and skills. She told me she secured that. Like that made me excited. I later on will go on and talk about that on my stories, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram. But I share this because I want to show it's possible for those who think that they can't achieve things, whether it's limiting beliefs or ceilings. I want people to believe that they can do it. We're not better than each other. We are all smart experts in our space. What we need to do is be more visible, because at this point, everyone is capable. Like I don't really meet most people these days who don't have any skills. I don't roll like that. But what I do find is a barrier on visibility. How do we make ourselves more visible so we can be of service to others?
Yeah, no, those are huge points. Huge points. What do you got to add, Precious?
When Deidre talks, I'm normally just taking notes. So, so I'll pick on Matthew Maxwell, who's watching right now. So he sent me a message a couple of weeks or months ago, and he says, "Oh my gosh, I was listening to like some Profiles in Risk, and the speaker like dropped your name," and I was like, "Oh wait, what episode? Who was speaking?" So Deidre Wright. I was like, "Oh yes." And I said, and I love it every time I get that feedback that, like I said, it's out there, right? When people know what you stand for, what you're promoting, what your passion is, what you're great at, then they can go on and spread the good news, if you will. I think that there was again, one of these trends on LinkedIn not too long ago, my big ask. And so when you're able to tell people, hey, look, this is what I'm working on. And so if you are in the market for, or know someone else who is, share my info. I'd be, honored and humbled, by referral, and putting it out there, because sometimes people don't know that you're looking to grow deeper or get more exposure or more connections, in an area, and sometimes, again, I get referred to people all the time. Hey, if you're looking to do this, do you know so-and-so? Can I give you an introduction, and let that connection, kind of take on its own momentum and chemistry and go on to yield, tenfold, out there in the universe, what we're trying to build and do. And so when you're very consistent and specific, and like she said, clear on what it is you're seeking, then I don't want to go too deep into manifestation and that sort of thing, but
I love it.
You fish with whatever bait depending on what you're trying to catch. And so if you see that there's a trend where you're from a lead generation standpoint, if you only tend to get a certain type of person reaching out to you, you have to kind of reevaluate, what am I putting out there? Because they're responding to what I'm putting out there. And if I'm not bringing in what I want, how do I change that? And owning that, there's something that I can proactively do to communicate a little bit better so that I can, get a better result. So I do have to, call Deidre out again, because she, and I appreciate her so much. She's kind of my go-to when I contemplating big moves and changes, right? And so I reached out to her around this time last year, with an idea. And Matthew, she, again, because she gives it to me straight, so I don't ever change. She's like, okay, that's cute. I understand. Okay, what does that have to do with what you're about? How does that fit into the picture? You shared with me what your vision statement is. You've told me where you're going, and that seems a little distracting. Like, if it's not building towards, then it's distracting and diluting, the message. And so we have to just be mindful that, there's only one Walmart for a reason. It's very rare that you can be successful if you spread yourself too wide and not deep. And so people want to know that you're their priority, that your circle of expertise is hovered over where they need it, and so that is, again, back to the agent broker application, where a lot of us don't really know either what that looks like, or how do we, run those circles where we can plug into other people who have been successful. And that's another big thing too, having mentorship and surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are maybe on the same journey and not afraid to share best practices. Not to say that you have to change your model, but if you're aspiring to go in one direction, you probably need to be in that lane of traffic where they're heading there.
Right. Are there any top questions people have when it comes to personal brand? I mean, I know I hear them, but in the insurance space, like, what the streets are talking, what are the streets talking about when it comes to sales and branding and personal branding? I mean, I'd be curious to hear what people say. And it's Matthew, I know he made a comment, but the funny thing is, when I dropped your name, I was actually talking to Tony about how personal brands are good for organizations. And I mentioned how when I think of CPCU, I think of Precious and Tony. Now I think of Matt. I don't know why I didn't connect you, Matthew, to CPCU, but now I'm like, I think of you. I think of you, the Trinity. Honestly, now, but it's like, I say that because while the CPCU is a great organization, you need these brand ambassadors to push on organizational. You can't solely promote yourself. You need brand ambassadors saying, here's the transformation I have had. Ever since I joined CPCU, this has happened to my life. And this is why you need to be a member. Like, companies need to understand you need brand ambassadors. You can't just have a corporate brand and not have brand ambassadors telling your story, because when it comes to social proof, I will listen to Matthew and Precious over any organization any day, because they're having real talk to me saying, Deidre, no, this place is legit. You need to join. So you need brand ambassadors. But what do brand ambassadors need? They need to understand what is a unique value proposition to tell people so they want to be a part of the party.
Mm-hmm. I also think I still see companies going through marketing in a more traditional way. So like the idea of like an influencer, okay, is a big deal right now. If you're an influencer, you've developed a following, you can make a couple $100,000 a year, maybe even $1 million a year by selling other people's products, right? And you have to be careful. You have to test those products out and be authentic about it. Like you can't just hawk someone else's product because they're willing to give you money. But that still doesn't even connect the dots fully, right? Your best brand ambassadors should be, I'm going to use the word should be your employees and your team members that are invested, right? I think some of the big companies like try and connect those dots, but they're still doing it in a very kind of, excuse my language, but a half-assed kind of way, like a hollow kind of way. It's always like, this is Johnny. He like, came up through our leadership program and then you don't even really hear from Johnny. Like Johnny's like, it's great. Like, and then they move on, right? Like there's nothing, there's no substance there. It's just like, they're still like a poster child or a pinup. And I completely agree with you. It's you need those people that are a brand unto themselves that are basically almost equal to the company brand or synonymous with the company brand, right? Again, it goes back to that whole, like, do you root for the player or do you root for the laundry, right? So I don't know if y'all are football fans.
No, break it down to me. What's going on with the laundry?
So it's basically like it's a football reference or a baseball reference, right? So like the laundry refers to the uniform that's on their back, right? Well, on the uniform is typically the player's name and their number, but the uniform itself, like I'm a Yankees fan, so it's always the pinstripes, right? So it's like the pinstripes of the Bronx. Well, do you root for the team or do you root for the individual players? Well, 30 years ago, everyone rooted for the team. That's what they were. They were all about the team, right? It didn't matter whether they were good, bad, didn't matter who was on the team. The team was the team, right? Like if you came from Cleveland, you rooted for the Browns. Like that was it, right? You rooted for the Indians. If you lived in Long Island, you were a Jets and Mets fan, right? Like that was just the way it went. Nowadays, with social media, digital media, people root for the player, right? Like they've followed LeBron from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland to LA. Like some people have 4 jerseys, but they all say LeBron on the back. Like that's the difference. Okay. Big companies still haven't learned that. Big brokers still haven't learned that. They think the laundry is the most important thing. It's not. It's the player, it's the personality that goes along with it that's almost synonymous with that team, right? The teams that are able to encapsulate the fans and keep them fans of the team are able to keep those players around, right? Like that's why it's such a big deal. When you let a LeBron go, it's disastrous because your team has become synonymous or actually built on top of the brand of that individual. But so I digress. I mean, that was like a long-winded.
No, it's real. It's all about the individual. I mean, I like individuals. Like, you know what I'm saying? I like concepts like individuals, like company, like you think about branding. It's like, okay, why pick this, Coca-Cola over Pepsi? They're the same thing, except for Pepsi's just watered down, or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing, but it's like you go after something because of maybe I saw the great ad with someone I like. Maybe Beyonce, I think she did like Pepsi commercials with Britney Spears back in the days. Ever since then, I've been drinking the darn Pepsi. It's like you go after these different things. I saw that Brett had a question. So what platforms would you recommend people to use if they're just getting started with personal branding? Great question. So like I said, I have a 4-step framework. The third is network. As in the great saying of this guy on the internet, you got to go where the money resides. Okay. And so you got to figure out where is your network at? Like what happens if people like, I'm in a personal brand and they put it where they want to go. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. You got to go to like, if I want to connect with certain people, where will they be at? So you got to reverse engineer. Like if I want to connect with executive leaders, if I want to meet with agency owners, where are they at? Okay. Because those are different venues. So for example, you can start with just LinkedIn most professionals are on LinkedIn and sharing posts or resharing posts with your opinions about it or doing videos or doing stories. If you're intimidated by doing a lot of editing and content creation, just literally make a video and post it on your stories and do that daily if you can, or at least like twice a week to get some engagement and traction. Also, there's podcasts. I love podcasts and live shows because people can watch them on demand. They're evergreen lead generation. So I typically, do them and have some way people can get in touch with me. And like years down the line, I'm still getting people connecting with me because I left breadcrumbs to get connected with me. Obviously, Facebook, I would say Facebook is good for entrepreneurs and agency owners. That's a great tool because people think of it as just like party pictures from college, but that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are at in the Facebook groups and things like that. I like Instagram because it's very visual. So if you're also trying to target business owners or do business owners, depending on if it's middle market or, seem like bigger companies, they're middle market or below, they're probably on Instagram talking about their business. Why don't you connect with them there and see what their risks are and put content. So you got to think like, where does the money reside? Where's my network at? Where is my club? People I want to connect with. And I love Clubhouse. See, Precious and I were in the club, and Clubhouse, it's a great place to be at. Just talk with people. It's like, imagine like a virtual conference where there are different panels and you kind of go and you can follow people and you go into different panel kind of group, they call them rooms, and you can talk about something. You can talk as a industry expert about here are the top risks you need to think about and have that and connect with people and answer their questions. Like there are so many free tools now. That's why I say like it's insane if you can't start personal branding, because now more than ever, it's great ways to get your brand out there, be your own publicist, as well as generate leads and have them go from conversation or post to in your inbox and sales.
I love that because, like I said, depending on the audience and who's going to be more receptive to what. So on Clubhouse, I do much more listening than I do talking, because kind of like what Deidre asked a little while ago, she's like, what's the buzz? What's the scoop? What's the hot topic? What's keeping people up at night? And so I like to have the ability to do the whole fly on the wall, and I want to hear what the pain points are so that I can come in and offer solutions for those pain points, right? So there's certain platforms that I go and I do much more observation, because I'm just gathering data and figuring out how am I going to apply that. If you're B2B, then LinkedIn, again, because that's typically where, more professionals are. But if you're trying to get in front of end user, I don't think that, John P, Q Public is out there on a daily on LinkedIn still. And so Facebook, again, may be what has more end user traffic if you're trying to get in front of households and moms and dads and families. So, figuring out and also catering your message to the platform. Sometimes when I see literally the identical post across platforms, it comes across very unoriginal.
Yeah.
Because you just copy and pasted that, opened up another browser and dropped that and had no thought to who was reading that, and if it was going to resonate. I like to contribute to industry, publications, because that gives me credibility amongst my peers. But my customers typically don't care if I have another article in, XYZ, platform. Whereas, again, my personal opinion, when you talk about, kind of the old school mentality on how to do this, a lot of it is a generational divide. Right. So if you're approaching agency owners that are perhaps now in their 50s and 60s, and they remember having to beat the concrete, knock on doors, and that sort of thing, then they may or may not appreciate that the attention is shifted. Cold calling is almost out the door. Everyone's got cell phones and D&D. Unsolicited spam. So the target is constantly moving and figuring out, like you said, if the crowd is leaving this place, like you said, where's the after party? Where are we going now? Because I'm going to follow you there and stay in front of you.
Yeah. I to your points, Precious, and to your points, Deidre, I think what's also really, really important is to get across to people that tailoring your message also means that it should be original. Like you should have, okay. So there are so many of these services out there, and I'm not going to put anyone specifically on blast, but it's like, we have curated content that you can share with your clients and they're going to find it to be high value. And you're like, wait a minute. So this is curated content that only I'm sharing? And they're like, no, anyone who signs up to the service to share it. And you're like, so you're telling me that 500 other brokers are sharing the same exact articles out there, and it just creates din that people learn to filter out, right? If you're going to share an article, say something about it, right? Like have a unique take, or put them on blast and be like, this is a load of crap, like something, okay? Something that will make people be like, oh, well, this person isn't just sharing this out there because they read it and thought it was interesting. They're actually, paraphrasing what's interesting. I would say the other thing is that, unique, genuine content is king. That's what it is. Okay. Even if it's rough, even if it's like a schmo like me standing in front of a camera, like talking about things, at least it's original, right? Like it's not something that someone's parroted. Things that are overly produced, that flew on TV. It doesn't flow now. Like it just doesn't, right? Like the things that get the most, like things that go viral are almost never massively produced kind of commercials. The things that go viral are, the dude in the back of the moving truck who's talking about politics. It's the guy who's rapping, who's along the street, who's like talking about how, like, I don't know, his house is
the ocean spray guy, the ocean spray guy on the skateboard.
Yes, yeah, like those things. So, just to like, okay, I apologize. I'm going to digress again, but like, I could talk about this all day long. The person that put really YouTube on the map was Casey Neistat. Okay, Casey Neistat worked as like a videographer, and I forget where he worked. He worked at one of the major I forget if it was ESPN or something like that. And he was like, look, I'm sick and tired. They're like editing my stuff. I can't be creative. They're just telling me to do this cookie cutter stuff and make it look good. Right. So he's like, I want to get on YouTube and create my own stuff. So he went on YouTube, which for the moment was just a bunch of people yelling at a camera and stuff like that, or filming like their daughter's, dance recital. And he started using these like producing techniques to make video, but he made videos different than anyone else. So if anyone saw, like, there was a Nike commercial that was like, he did like maybe 10 or 12 years ago, where Nike was like, here's $500,000, go make a commercial for, the web and see what it does. All he did was he bought plane tickets, brought a camera and a professional runner with Nikes on, and just videotaped the person in these awesome landscapes running. That's all they did. Like, that was the entire commercial, and just obliterated records in terms of the number of views of like an online ad. And that's what put him on the map. It's taking something and doing something unique with it, right? Like, it's not just being, again, it's not just blending into the background. Like, you have to have a unique take. And to your point, Deidre, like, insurance people are conservative. And when you say, like, I have this great new way to say this, immediately, like, the alarm bells go off and the red flags go up, and they're like, we're going to get sued, call the E&O carrier, like, something's going to happen, right? Like, I think...
Let me just add this. They are conservative and when it comes to producing content, but like most of the people I know in insurance are like hilarious, huge, outgoing successful, but really big care. Like, they are definitely not PC. They're not the all the way It's like they have these amazing personalities, and they get on stage, and I'm like, who is this? Like, is this a cyborg? Like, what is this? What's like what is what happened to you?
They button the top button. They show up for work, and it's like, all right, personality off. Like, no, that's not the way it works. No.
But I love now that we're all working remote. Because I've been in the remote environment before, pre-COVID. Before it was happening all the time, and anytime a little bit of reality bled through, you would have to like dress it up. Oh, I'm working from home today. But now we're like babies crying, dogs barking, not excessively, mind you, like try, right? But it really, it's kind of taken down some of these pretenses a little bit, and I love the comment on here about, a little bit raw is more trustworthy. That's fantastic, because to your point, Matt, if it feels overproduced, like this is the thousandth take, like my personal confession when it comes to things like this, and I'm still not really great, is some people like Matthew does a fantastic job of like eye contact, right? Normally, again, on my laptop, whatever my setup, I wrestle with looking at myself, looking at the camera, looking at the screen. So my eyes are off sometimes, and that would bother me, right? But then I watch, other, things that come on daily, like, again, another plug to Tony Conyas, with Hey Insurance. And, Tony's is his first of all, he's so deep in his mind, I don't think he's paying attention to where his eyes are at the camera, but that's not that's not a bad thing. And so, when you kind of, if your hurdle is waiting for perfection, when you realize that, what is the saying, that perfect is the enemy of good, or, something to that effect, where, if it keeps you from getting out there, because there's always room for improvement with all of us. But everyone has to start somewhere, and I hear that a lot. You're asking about the buzz for just individual producers, if they're not the agency owner and they feel like branding and marketing is somebody else's responsibility. And they're like, well, why would I do a whole bunch as me when I'm just, this person on behalf of this brokerage? But if you can kind of speak to that we all, whether we lean into it or not, have a personal brand, good, bad, or indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
Internally and externally, because also sometimes the biggest hurdle is not always the clients, internally, to get stuff done. And I say that because I've worked some places where it's been some characters, and I'm like, I need a certificate of insurance, and it's like pulling teeth. And I'm like, I need this because the client gonna rip me up if I don't give them what they need so they get this contract, get this money, And so part of that is like not only external, it's internally. How are you managing these relationships? So when people see an email from you, they're happy to open it versus like avoiding it. Or because what happened was, I'll just tell a little story. Like I said, I had this one coworker who'd been there forever, did what he wanted to do, coming at you and stay. It was interesting, and I'm like, I got global risk management clients. They need things. They're not going to complain to him if things go wrong. They're going to complain to me. And I don't want to have no complaints on my name. So what I would do, people would like talk about him. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make him like me. They're like, yeah, as if. I'm like, no. And so what happened is, we were on the same floor. So I would literally sometimes walk around to his desk and like shoot the shit with him and talk and do things. And it's like, let me talk. How was your weekend? What's going on? He was kind of grumpy, but over time, and he started walking over to my desk. And so I'm like, I say this because it takes time, but you have to invest in relationships and get things done. It's like now he's more excited, or I'm at the top of the to-do list because I took the time to get to know this person, get to know me. And I'm not saying I, kiss his butt, because I am y'all, if y'all know me, I'm pretty raw and real. So we were just, but you got to know like, oh, Deidre, if she's saying she needs this right away, she probably means it, versus just saying things that complain, if that makes sense. You got to have manage relationship internally and externally as well.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm blocking out your face, Deidre, because Heather is sharing essays here. But personal confession, yes, I do get people involved in some crazy ideas. Heather can speak to that personally. And Tony sought Heather out. I believe she's parlaying onto Matthew Maxwell's comments from earlier about going to the CPCU Society, and kind of like what you're talking about, Deidre, is like meeting people where they're at and kind of like almost not dragging them, but, like actively coaxing them along. Right. Which is a fantastic point in terms of online digital branding and sales too. You're always playing that balancing act between being proactive and being in front of them, and being annoying to the point where like they don't want to hear from you anymore, right? And so that's always a question you have to ask. You always have to be like, all right, is this one email too much? Is this one video email too much? Like all of those things kind of have to be that give and take, right? Like, and it's organic process too, right? Like, do you coach kind of like to include that, like, monthly or quarterly or yearly check-in to be like, all right, what we set out to do, is it doing it, or do we have to kind of like tweak a little bit?
Yeah, the first thing, like says, the step is clarity. So I make people write out their 1 to 3 year plan. Like, well, what are you trying to achieve? And then let's reverse engineer you to position you as being that. So if you want to be the head of some department or senior producer or make, I don't know, $500,000, like, okay, let's put that out there. Now, what is it going to take to do that? Because that will determine how eager you need to be to put yourself out there. Because you can't tell me you want to have these big lofty goals, but you're not putting in the work. Or if you want to dial it back, okay, cool. So that's why I'm like, ask people, what do you want your legacy to be? Tell me your legacy. Let's reverse engineer that and figure out the proper steps. So to me, it's all about, like I said, clarifying, because what people do is they want these big things, but it's like, are you going to put in the work? And if you're not, you can have dreams, but they're not going to be reality if you don't put in the work. And I don't believe in being okay, I can be annoying to people who don't like me. But, part of it is like, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. If you want bland, go ahead, have bland, but I'm all about seasoning. It's spicy over here. So if you like spice, well, that's the right appetite for me. So I say that because part of it is like understanding what you want. We cannot be begging people to be our friends or our customers. They should want to be partners of ours and believe in our vision and with the same vision, and us being a partner to help them execute their vision. So part of it is like, what do you want? What is it going to take? What key performance indicators do you need to get it done? And part of that is leading with value. Do not spam people. That is freaking annoying. Lead with value. Give them resources. Give them tips. Answer their questions. That way you're a resource and not a spam or a bot that's out there just, annoying. So I think that's the thing. Be clear about what you want, and then be clear about what you're giving. If you're ever in the position of being a mooch, then you're not in a good kind of energy alignment. You need to think about how can I be of value and not be a mooch.
Yeah. But I think that's a really good point, talking about KPIs, having these key performance indicators where you're able to gauge, are you moving in the right direction? Are we moving forward? I know when it comes to like small businesses and those of us who, do a lot of promoting online, like NPS scores, net promoter scores, where you are able to track how referable are you? How often are past customers willing to share your information and refer others to you? But, I often kind of go back to, before you kind of go full blast on like driving traffic to your website, is your website ready? Really present well, because I hate that when I see people who are putting in all this effort. And so, for example, now, again, stepping into the current day and age, landing pages take you somewhere where there's actually a call to action. Sometimes if you're just driving them to your URL, they're going to get lost and then they're going to forget what you wanted them to do when they got there, and so when you're able to ask yourself, I remember a couple years ago, I had a friend of mine who, did hair, right? And she did it from her home, and someone's like, man, your hair looks awesome. Like, where did you go? And I'm like, well, she's good, but you got to be willing to sit Indian style on the floor. There may perhaps there might be something frying in the kitchen. Like, is the experience going to be something that I feel confident sharing with somebody? And so we have to be open to that feedback as well, that, okay, I've put these things out. Does it resonate? Is it hitting the spot? What is the takeaway? Because maybe I'm doubling down in a direction that's not aligned with how I intended to come across.
Yeah. No, I'm right on board with you on that. You have to be extremely intentional about how you're manufacturing that ask or how you're leading up to that ask, right? So like to your point, Deidre, like you knocked it out of the park. Like if you've ever read Jab, 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 Right Hook, like that's right in line with that, right? You provide value, and then once you've provided this mountain of value and you make your ask, like the ask pales in comparison to the point where like, you see all this value I brought you, now I'm asking you for less in return, right? Like, but I'm pretty sure I deserve it because I brought you all of this stuff first. And to your point, Precious, like, yeah, you got to be really intentional about how you're approaching the experience and how that marketing process feels, right? Like, so it can't just be first of all, we as much as people want to say like people are goldfish, okay, they've actually done a number of studies like people are worse than goldfish, okay? Like goldfish have better attention spans at this point in time. So you have to make it as simple as possible. When you get to the point of that ask, right, you've branded yourself, you've brought value, you've gotten that 80-90% of the way down the road of building that relationship. When you make that ask, you have to make it so easy to like click and that's the sale, or click and the relationship is now cemented. Like that is the key. And so I think a lot of older agency principals still don't understand that. I always thought, like, I don't know if you've like bought a car or leased a car recently, but what's funny is COVID caused them to change what I think should have been changed 20 years ago, right? Like you go through this process and you're like, okay, the car I want in red with this thing. All right, let's make the deal happen, right? We have the financing, everything. All right, sign these 97,000 pieces of paper. And I'm like, what? Like, can't I just like swipe my card and go? And they're like, no, there's like all of this stuff you have to do. And I was like, well, how about you just put it in one digital? Like, they still had the old dot matrix printer on the side that had tearaway stuff on the side. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really? And what's funny is it wasn't like a unique problem. It wasn't just like, one older dealer. It's all of them have the same thing. And some of it could be regulation, but a lot of it, I think, is probably just like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like, until someone eats your lunch. And then you're like, oh, maybe it was broken the whole time. I think that's a big point there. Matthew Maxwell brought up a good question that I think we're going to have to do maybe in a future episode, talking about, claims or other folks on the carrier side that have kind of helped make sales. And I think that really kind of works into also your network piece of it, Deidre, is, just because you're a broker doesn't mean you can't have friends that are claims people or underwriters or risk management people on the carrier side. You can actually build out your value proposition by knowing those people and having that network to kind of draw on as well, which is, especially if they align with your niche. I think that's a huge deal as well.
Shout out to Amy Waninger. Network without bias. Like, she got a book on it, and you need to have a network. Your network is your network. If you don't have these different people to call on to pick their brains or get, insurance is like, it's always a new riddle. It's like you get something, you're like, what the heck is this? And it's like, you gotta have a friend to call. You gotta have a friend to call. You gotta have one, Precious or Matt. You gotta have someone to call. Like, I got the situation. What do you think? You don't think of all the you got to get the details. You don't put people out there, but it's like you have to have the friends, because that's honestly what helped me grow my career, is ask people for help. Like, I didn't know all the answers, but I knew to find them, so I would.
And that's
and you know what? Those are the best people to have on the team, right? The one who's like, look, I don't know all the answers, but I can find them, right? Mm-hmm. All right, I cut you off, Precious.
No. I was saying that was really kind of the premise and the, the purpose of this live cast that we do, is that I think traditionally, historically, when people think about CPCU, the fact that the word underwriter is in the credential. And so, when they come across those of us that are on the sales end of it, there's always this kind of impression, like, why are you doing this when you can be, on the underwriting side, or you can be on the claim side? And being well-rounded by going through the rigor of the curriculum makes us better positioned to be able to tell the story, in a different way, because we have all of that training, the understanding of the other pieces of the ecosystem. We're not just, have this very myopic view of just, what we're trying to get done. And so we wanted to bring this to the table. And, you guys have both said, earlier, as far as the easy yes, right? So Deidre was willing to come on just on the strength of the branding that we have. Matt, as he confesses, bringing people into crazy ideas. So for both of us being on the broker side, he's like, Precious, let's do this live cast. We got to get this message to the people. And I'm like, all right, I'm here for it. Let's do this. So when you build that relationship, make yourself, and you have to be proud of the story that you're going to tell, and so back to platform is one thing, doing a gut check or connecting with a professional that can help you figure out how do you curate this story so that when you tell it, it's not just compelling, it's relevant and it makes sense. So with all that, Ms. Deidre, we want to give you an opportunity to tell the people how they can get in contact with you, because that is completely your wheelhouse and what you specialize in.
Yeah, if you are out there, you want to go from unseen expert to industry celebrity, I'm here to help you out. And the whole point of it really is to help you attract dream careers and dream clients. So if you want to I give out free trainings and resources in my Facebook group, which is called Personal Branding for Industry Celebrities. You can join by going to my website, which is deidrewright.com/community. So deidrewright.com/community. You can go there because I have a lot of resources. And next week, I'm actually having a 5-day challenge to build your brand as an industry celebrity. So if you want to go through the process and have a game plan for 2021, join me next week by joining my community to get that ticket to be there. So that would be great for you guys, especially in insurance. I know the game because I've been in it. So if you want to brand yourself as a leader in our space, which is so important right now during global pandemic where risks are going crazy, be there or be square, because now is your year to brand yourself.
Awesome. You know what I appreciate, Precious? When Deidre comes on, she's not like a typical guest. Like some of the other guests are like deer in the headlights, and like, you know, like I'll have to lead them into the comments and stuff. Deidre's like, "Excuse me, get out of my way. There's a comment over here, and I would like to answer the question." It was like she was like, "Okay, I'm here now, and this is gonna be my thing." Like, I love that. That's like maybe we could do an episode on you know, making your presence felt with authority. I think Deidre would be fantastic.
I would love that, because we want to answer people's questions. So that's the thing. And so I really appreciate this, because I really respect you both. And I think that's the key. Like, I don't know what you're like, want to talk on whatever. I'm like, I'll go anywhere with y'all. You know, just let me know where to show up. I like put it on my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, I probably won't show up, because I need something to keep me on task, but I will follow them into the fire any day. So thank you for having me here to help you share your story about personal branding.
Awesome. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would say this has been a special one, because this is the first Friday that we've done. But for anyone who normally checks in with us, it is still Wednesday at 3 Eastern, 2 Central that we are coming at you live on. Again, a reminder, you can always comment, subscribe, share. We can keep the conversation going after the fact. And make sure to, if you didn't get a chance to watch this live, watch the recorded version on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook page. Again, Deidre, thank you so much. Precious, Happy New Year. I'm glad we're back at it. And we're lining up another one. We got another one lined up for this next week. So I can't wait to do another one with you.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Happy